we're very proud of this milestone, and we knew we wanted to highlight a topic that is very near and dear to us, and it has been since the very beginning, and that is younger onset dementia. So today I am very honored to be the moderator of today's Quality of Life Symposium through the lens of younger onset dementia, forging a new path. So for the sake of time, I am going to briefly introduce our presenters and panelists for today, but I highly encourage you to read their full bios in the abstract book that you have. First up, we'll have Dr. Sandy Weintraub, a neuropsychologist and associate director of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, present on differential diagnosis in younger onset dementia. Next, we'll have Dr. Darby Morhart, clinical social worker and director of the Mesolim Center Outreach, Recruitment, and Community Engagement Corps, who will present on the unique challenges of families living with younger onset dementia. Next, we'll have Diana Kos, former primary care partner to her husband and founding executive director of Lorenzo's House. She will present on her journey as a care partner and how that inspired her to build Lorenzo's House. And I'm really going to highlight this. She just returned from the Alzheimer's Disease International Conference in Krakow, Poland, where she was a keynote speaker given the global importance of shining a light on younger onset dementia. Yes, very excited. And next, we will invite our panelists up who will join our presenters. And we are going to have a conversation about the lived experience of younger onset dementia. Vicki Johnson, a person walking with younger onset dementia. Her husband and primary care partner, Robert Johnson, who will be joining her, and their son, Rashad Johnson, is going to be joining us as well. And also Rachel Kaplan will be joining us and sharing about her experience as a care partner for her husband. And with that, I am so excited for today's program, and without further ado, I would like to welcome to the lectern Dr. Sandy Weintraub.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 30th Alzheimer's Day at Northwestern. We're so very happy to have you all here. Thank you for coming, and thank you all for participating and being such an important part of the work that we do here. So Dr. Rabinovich gave a wonderful introduction to some of the things that I'm going to be talking about, so I thank him very much for giving you all the expertise, and it was a great talk, right? Okay, so I'm going to start off. What is dementia? Dementia is an adult brain disorder. Dementia is a symptom. It's not a disease. It's defined as a change in somebody's thinking abilities or behavior from a usual way of thinking or behaving. It worsens over time, and it interferes with the ability to get things done on a daily basis. That is dementia. Dementia is caused by brain disease. Okay, it's a brain disease that causes dementia. A lot of people ask, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? Dementia is what I just told you. It's not Alzheimer's disease. It's what I told you, and it could be caused by Alzheimer's, but it could also be caused by a lot of other things. The brain, our brains don't have such nice colors in them, but each of these colors shows you that there's a different part of the brain that's responsible for different things. The brain works as a whole, but it's a factory. So the green part is responsible for your ability to talk. The blue, I can't see if we can see the colors, but there's a part very deep in the hippocampus that Dr. Rabinovich was talking about. That is the memory part, that you can close your eyes and think, what was I doing yesterday at this time, and roll back to that. Different part of the brain. The back of the brain is visuospatial. So every part of the brain does something else. In these neurodegenerative diseases that cause dementia, the disease starts in one part. It doesn't start all over the brain. But over time, it moves to other parts. And this is why we see more and more and more symptoms over time. The symptoms represent where the disease is, not what it is. And I think Dr. Rabinovich made that point of, if the disease is in the back of the brain, you'll have visuospatial issues. If it's on the left, you will have language issues. If it's in the hippocampus, you'll have memory issues. So we don't know what's in the brain when we see a person who's having these problems, but we know where it is. So let's talk about younger onset and older onset. Older onset dementia is the most common. It's just as people get older, they become more and more vulnerable to all kinds of things that can affect the brain's ability to function and cause the symptoms that look like a dementia. Then we have the onset of symptoms, and I don't know why they picked 65 years. I think it's because it was traditionally retirement age. So everybody who is over 65, and everybody, not my retirement age. So, and everybody who's under 65 is younger onset, and everybody who's over 65 is older onset. And the younger onset is what we typically see for younger onset is somebody between 50 and 65. However, in some of the diseases, like the ones that are inherited, the onset could be in the 40s, like the family that Dr. Rabinovich talked from Colombia, South America. Those people are in their 40s, and it kind of runs rampant in the family. And fortunately, that's a very tiny part of Alzheimer's disease. What causes dementia? Because I said lots of things could cause it. Is there a pointer? I better not do this. Okay, so I split the causes of dementia into two general classes. There's one that is potentially reversible. This is not a true dementia. If your liver is not functioning properly, your blood pressure goes out of control. Temporarily, it can affect your brain. And when we correct those diseases, we can make you better. In the other class of dementias, they are currently treatable, as Dr. Rabinovich has said, but they are not reversible. We can't stop them. We can slow them down, but we can't really stop them. Now, when I first started here at Northwestern to start an Alzheimer's Center, if you look down at the next two set of boxes, the one on the left says Alzheimer's disease neuropathology. Those are the plaques and tangles in the brain. So that's one form of neurodegenerative disease. The other form, since I've been working here, we've discovered all these other forms on the right side, the non-Alzheimer's neuropathology. It's not just Alzheimer's that causes cognitive impairment and ultimately dementia, but we've learned about diffuse Lewy body disease, frontotemporal dementia, tauopathies, TDP-43 proteinopathies. We've learned so much more. And so we now have biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease, but we don't have biomarkers for all of the other causes of dementia. And we're working very hard to try to do that because, as you know, once we know what's causing it, then we can try to target it with disease-modifying therapies. As all of you who are living with younger onset dementia know, it's very hard to diagnose. And why is that? Well, first of all, it's very rare. It's very rare. Second of all, younger individuals are healthy. They look great. Come into the doctor's office and say, I can't remember anything. And the doctor says, oh, don't worry about it. You're fine. As Dr. Rabinovich said, the symptoms are atypical. So it's not memory loss, but it's personality change. It's groping for words, like the primary progressive aphasia. It's visuospatial, kind of, where is that thing? I just saw it here on the table. I can't find it anymore. And that's the posterior cortical atrophy. And typically, when younger individuals go into the doctor's office, and especially your primary care, they're attributed the symptoms to stress, depression. All of those things affect cognition, but they don't damage it. So treating depression, treating stress, if those are the causes of your episodic cognitive problems, they will go back to being normal. A big problem is the term dementia is stigmatizing. Who wants to be told they have dementia? Who wants to be called demented? And I have been, since 2016, working on this committee to try to address the terminology And there's been a lot of argument in our field because now people know what dementia is, right? It took years for people to know what dementia is. But there's still, like, we worked with a lot of people who are living with dementia. They don't want to be told they have dementia. They want something else. They would like brain disease or heart, or you have heart disease. Well, you have brain disease, but that's not a good term either. But we're working on it. Hopefully, we'll come up with something good. Now, as I told you, Alzheimer's disease is one cause of the younger onset dementia, and also young onset is called early onset. So you might see EOAD, early onset Alzheimer's disease. And that's to contrast it with, in the big blue circle on the outside, LOAD, which is called late onset Alzheimer's disease. And I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but I want to point out to you that a very tiny portion of Alzheimer's disease is due to early onset. Okay, so if you look at this, I don't know how to use this pointer, and never mind. So here we have, like on the bottom part of this graph, it looks like a rug. The top two rows that are in the yellow and the red represent earlier, younger onset Alzheimer's disease. And the blue, so out of 1,000 people, all the blue figures are figures that have the onset late, over the age of 65. And you can see there's many, 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 many more of those. And it's a tiny, tiny portion that has them early. And then the little red figures that are even smaller group, those are the people that carry the autosomal dominant mutations that we were talking about. These unfortunate families where the onset is in the 40s and it goes from one generation to another and across generations. Fortunately, those make up about 5 to 10% of all Alzheimer's disease. So then there's this not tiny, but not huge group of people with the younger onset that are in orange, or early onset Alzheimer's. And now we don't really understand what puts those people at risk because they don't have an autosomal dominant mutation. But yet they are developing these changes at an age that's much younger than what's common for Alzheimer's. We know that there are risk factor genes. Like if you have, we've now identified, 20 some risk factor genes. If you have 3 of those, you might have 1 chance. If you have 20 of those, your chances are higher. But you could have 20 and not develop the Alzheimer's disease. So we're still kind of trying to figure out that. The next slide I show you is going to be really busy. And this, ready? And unfortunately, I can't make you I can't make you an expert in this, but this is, I usually put the person's name that I take something from. This is Jeff Cummings, who is a leader in our field of Alzheimer's disease treatment. He's been really working in this for 40 years and drug development. This circle represents, and every little thing in the circle represents all of the drug targets that are being investigated to try for Alzheimer's disease. And up in the upper left side, we have the little, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the red square is amyloid. The next thing, I can't really see this. Epigenetic, and then there's immunologic factors. And so every different row up there in the upper left square is a different target. In the bottom circle, different drugs do different things. So some drugs improve the symptoms. You can think a little bit more clearly, you have better attention, your mood is better, but it doesn't get at the plaques and the tangles or the TDP-43 or the tau protein. There are others, the disease-modifying drugs, that's what Dr. Rabinovich was talking about, that actually attack the plaques and tangles. Now, we are trying to develop drugs that will attack TDP-43 and tauopathies, but much farther ahead in the Alzheimer drug development scene. But just to give you an idea that it's a tough problem, but we're going for it. We're going after it, and this is all over the world, this work is going on. So the actual dementia syndromes, it's what you are experiencing as a person living with dementia. is determined, what we call it, and here comes the terminology again, depends on what you have as your earliest symptom. So if your earliest symptom is short-term memory decline, that's called dementia of the Alzheimer type, because 80 to 90% of people who have memory loss as the presenting symptom will have Alzheimer's in their brain. There's another kind called behavioral variant frontotemporal dementia, where personality and behavioral decline. And these people get misdiagnosed most often because the first thought is it's depression or a midlife crisis or a bipolar disorder, and it really turns out to be a frontotemporal degeneration. Then there are language decline, also known as primary progressive aphasia, and the visuospatial decline, which is also known as posterior cortical atrophy. See how all these terms, we're trying so hard to get, say, do I have posterior cortical atrophy or do I have Alzheimer's disease in my visual area? And then there are some dementias that actually start with motor symptoms and then progress to include dementia symptoms, and we're not going to talk a lot about those today. So in the early stage of younger onset dementia, the symptoms are very different. So in the behavioral variant, you have poor organizational skills, some loss of initiative. The frontal lobes are very important for the get up and go. You get up in the morning, I'm going to do this and this and this. Personality changes also because of frontal lobe involvement. May be socially inappropriate. It's very embarrassing. They might, somebody walks down the street and says, oh, there's her slip is hanging out of her dress, and a very loud voice. And this is somebody who was always very proper and kind of watched what they said. In these people, in early stages, memory is fine. So they remember what happened yesterday, they remember what they did 3 weeks ago, but there's a personality change. In the people with primary progressive aphasia, totally different. There's no personality change. They don't have problems with their memory, but like you saw in that film, trouble coming out with words, stumbling over words, difficulty finding words. In the later stages, these symptoms progress. And because the disease starts in one place, it doesn't stay in one place. So it might move to other parts of the brain, and as it does, other symptoms come. But people are always asking me, I'm a clinician, I see people in the clinic, they say, well, what's going to come next? We don't know. We know something's going to come next, but we don't know because it all depends, where is it going? Is it going to the personality part? Is it going to the visual part? Is it going to the memory part? And so that's what determines the symptoms, and no two people are alike. In the early stage symptoms of progressive visuospatial atrophy, I think Dr. Rabinovich alluded to this. A lot of people think it's a visual problem. So they go to the ophthalmologist, the glasses prescription gets changed, doesn't help. Doesn't help the problem, because the problem, they can see, we can test their acuity, it's 100%. They just kind of look at this little black thing and say, oh, looks like a marshmallow, but the marshmallows aren't black. It's funny. It's because they don't connect it to anything else. Okay, and it's very hard to imagine this as somebody who doesn't have these symptoms, but they do exist. In the memory loss dementia, the earliest symptoms are forgetfulness. So they don't have any trouble visually perceiving things, they don't have trouble thinking of words, they don't have behavioral changes, but it's kind of like, I tell you something, and then 5 minutes later, tell you exactly the same thing as if I never told it to you in the first place. And that means that I don't remember what I just said, that short-term, very rapid memory loss. In the later stages of these illnesses, again, the symptoms progress. And it's interesting that in our experience, I don't know about you, Dr. Rabinovich, but the PCA cases tend to develop depression. And we don't know why it's depression and not some other symptom, but okay. And then, of course, in dementia of the Alzheimer type, the memory loss worsens. These dementia syndromes are different behaviorally, okay? One is different from the other, but then, like Dr. Rabinovich said, we don't know what's causing it until we get a biomarker test. So all of these syndromes can be caused by frontotemporal degeneration, but they all can be caused by Alzheimer's as well. But it's the proportion of which disease causes which. So if you're memory loss, 80% will be Alzheimer's. If you're a progressive aphasia, it's 40 to 50%. If you're posterior cortical atrophy, it's 70%. So again, the symptoms tell us where, but the biomarkers tell us what. And then I just want to add, we're doing a lot of things here at Northwestern to address earlier onset dementia, and people have really very special needs, and you're going to hear a lot more about that from our other presenters. But we like to kind of target our advice to families and treatments, interventions, to what is the primary problem. Because if you're not remembering things, but you're fine in everything else, you need a very different approach from somebody who is remembering everything but can't tell us about it. Okay, that's very, very different. So we kind of use that as a psychosocial approach to try to address patient-specific symptoms, person-specific symptoms.
Great. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. I want to especially thank our research participants and their families who are here. We could not do this work without you. I know that Dr. Vassar thanked you as well, but I just wanted to put out another shout out to you. So thank you. And as Lauren said, when we were planning today's symposium, we decided we wanted to focus on this clinical area of care on which we have focused much of our work over the last 30 years. This younger onset dementia, and not only Alzheimer's disease, as Dr. Weintraub described and Dr. Rabinovich described, but that younger onset dementia, the differential diagnosis is so much broader than late onset dementia, and that it can be, it can have the memory profile of Alzheimer's disease. It could have the language profile of primary progressive aphasia, the behavioral profile of frontotemporal dementia, and then also the visual spatial of the posterior cortical atrophy. So there's so many different ways that younger onset can present than the older onset dementia tends to do. So I have been asked to just briefly go through some of the challenges that families have faced, the families that I have gotten to know over the last 30 years have taught me much about what those challenges are. So again, younger onset is a subset. It's that there's really not a lot of epidemiological data on younger onset dementia, but it's estimated that 6 to 9% of all dementias, and Dr. Weintraub went through. I love your graph so much better than this, so to take that from you. The challenges for families living with younger onset dementia, as Dr. Weintraub indicated, is difficulty obtaining a good diagnosis. There are a lot of complex family dynamics. There's a lack of knowledgeable service providers for younger onset dementia families, and also the loss of employment and income can be pretty shattering for people. So Dr. Weintraub did talk about this, that a lot of times, you know, a physician is not expecting someone in their 40s and 50s to be coming into their office with a dementia. So they're going to be thinking about everything else but that, and probably focusing more on a psychiatric or a mood disorder or anything else. And so that brings families to, they then need to go to one doctor after another, and they're living in this limbo for a very long time, and until they find someone. It's the lucky family who gets that diagnosis right away. Many people are living with a lot of these symptoms for a really long time, not knowing exactly what to do. This is a different developmental stage of life. So someone who's in their 40s and 50s early 60s even, is in a different stage of life than those who are in their 70s and 80s and upwards. So they are, usually working and needing to stop work and, losing that sense of them self-esteem. A lot of our work gives us, tells us we identify with what we do. And so that's a huge loss. It also, that the person with living with the cognitive changes may lose their job because of the symptoms. And they often are caring for young children at home, and that ends up that the person, the other spouse, becomes the sole parent of the family. Also, young adult children, and also even just kids and teens in general, are trying to individuate and kind of separate from the family. And what happens when an illness like this happens in their family is that they're kind of pushed back into the family again, and they're kind of the struggle of, do I stay in the family and take care of my parent, even the person with dementia, and they may also want to stay there because of their well parent as well. In addition, we also see older parents caring for a middle-aged child with younger onset dementia. It's another dynamic. So again, people are more likely to be working at this time. They can be at the height of their career, can have a very heavy financial commitments, and there is a loss. There is a loss with that income. Social Security disability insurance is an application process that can be very cumbersome, and a lot of people often are not accepted on the first application and need to reapply. So several years ago now, though, younger onset Alzheimer's, primary progressive aphasia, and frontotemporal dementia were placed on the compassionate allowances list. And so that means that those people with those diagnoses are fast-tracked to get their Social Security disability sooner. Even with that, they can have the most immaculate application, they can still be denied. And so we at the Mesulum Center really have been, we help a lot of people in circumventing and helping navigate that process. Most of the services in the community, especially for persons living with dementia, are focused on caring for those who are older adults. And so people with younger onset dementia are not always feeling comfortable in those spaces. And they're also not as familiar with the non-Alzheimer's forms of dementia, such as the primary progressive aphasia or the FTD. So that is a challenge, a huge challenge. We also find that people with younger onset dementia, some have more insight than others. Dr. Weintraub was talking about posterior cortical atrophy. Those who have the visual spatial variant of young onset dementia are more aware of what's happening. People with the language variant, primary progressive aphasia, are more aware. And people with even memory too can be aware, especially in the early stages, and really want to retain that sense of self, to say, I'm still here. There's even an organization that was started called I'm Still Here with Alzheimer's disease. And as the disease progresses, that can change. But what I've seen as I've been working with people with dementia and families over many years is that the need for connection and meaning really, really remains throughout the course of the illness. But in spite of these changes, and as a result of these changes, relationships do change. There is increased dependency on others, but then I always say, who isn't dependent on other people? It's just that with this disease, you're going to start to depend on others a little more and a little more as time goes on. The impact on a spouse, the person's losing a companion. There's a relationship that we have with our partners and spouses that we hope is reciprocal, that mutual relationship. That is going to change. The spouse is working to try to manage how to balance that person still physically being there, but psychologically and emotionally maybe becoming more absent over time or changing over time. And it's a matter of juggling and understanding how to do that. But those that can see and really capitalize and focus on the remaining strengths of the person with the illness and really help to maintain and really retain that connection are going to be able to, it's going to be helpful over the course of the illness. And then what about the kids? So I worked with several years ago with the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration and helping to develop their kids and teens information and also their website. And some focus groups, the results of those focus groups indicated that there was a lot of anxiety from the children on, will my parents divorce? Am I responsible? How to have a voice. How can I continue to have a voice in this family on how I'm feeling when there's so much around me that's happening and changing? Also, what do I do with landmark events such as Mother's Day, Father's Day, graduations, weddings? You know, should my parent come? Sometimes younger kids can be embarrassed of their family member coming to a ball game, and how do you do that? And how do you handle that as a family? So, but also recognizing that they don't want other people speaking for them. They want to have their own ability and their voice. This is a family who presented at one of our Zoom Alzheimer days a few years ago. We had focused on some of this on different types of dementia. This is a younger onset family who had, they had expressed such resilience. And I guess that's what I want to also leave you with today, is that there are all of these challenges, but there is also ways of continuing to grow and learn and find meaning from these experiences. And this is an example of one family's experience.
When my mom was first diagnosed back in 2016, even pre-COVID, it did make us closer as a family because we realized that, my mom physically was there, but mentally declining. So we were all on the same team. We wanted to do what was best for her. So we put aside everything else just to try to be the best family that we could and be there for each other. We really tried to remain as close as possible, especially with us as siblings and our dad, who we knew he was getting overwhelmed just being with her 24/7 because of the pandemic and just trying to keep her safe as well. But I think we did a great job of adapting and like FaceTime, Zoom, even being outdoors and going for like a family walk
as much as possible. We just had to adapt, and I will say one positive of someone with Alzheimer's is they're not aware of what's going on. So it's just really nice that she's always happy.
One piece of advice is just to make sure that you're always laughing and take things lightheartedly. My brother is the ultimate jokester, prankster, and he loves like poking fun at my mom and tickling her, picking her up and carrying her, as you can see in this video.
We can't do it by ourselves. It's okay to ask for help, and it's probably a lot better and as smooth a ride as possible if you do ask for help.
Okay. And then a few years ago, I heard of Lorenzo's house, and I met Diana Kos. And she had, and she will tell you more about Lorenzo's house and her story. But we are very proud to be collaborating with them on a music, movement, and community project in the Bronzeville community. And I mean, talk about forging a new path in young onset dementia. That is certainly what Diana has been doing with Lorenzo's house. So I'd like to invite her to come up now.
The culture in our home changed. We were completely caught off guard.
We typically think of Alzheimer's disease as a disease of older people. If the symptoms begin before the age of 65, which is uncommon, that's considered younger onset.
I think the biggest thing is just I can't have a conversation with them anymore. Losing that, I think, was really a lot.
Our tagline at Lorenzo's house is "We bring light."
We need to raise awareness about young onset Alzheimer's.
What Lorenzo's house is doing is really incredible.
Now life has me on this new path. It's time to build. It's time to fight back. And maybe we can turn all of this sorrow and this story into something that heals. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diana. Thank you, Lauren, thank you. Thank you, Lauren and Darby, for coordinating this beautiful day. Lorenzo's house feels so honored to be on stage to share our mission today at the 30th Alzheimer's Day here at the Mesulum Center. So thank you, I know, right? I do want to give a shout out to Darby. Darby is, her name in this space is kind of like Cher. You just say Darby. It's true. Darby, yeah, let's give it up to Darby. When Lorenzo's house started just 3 years ago, I was connected to Darby, and she has been a text and a call away from me personally, and she has just given kindness and wisdom and insight to our community at Lorenzo's house. So thank you. I am going to start today with an open letter to my husband. My dear Lorenzo, it started with true love. The way we belong to each other, our soulful devotion, love of each other's lives. Our world so full, 2 sweet boys, morning music, lively kitchen ball games, chess games, your kindness, your calm, your intellect. I see you in our sons. Then, like a thief in our home, our dreams and plans taken, a new identity, a new fear, a new way, this diagnosis of our family. It's a blur to me, all of it, unimaginable suffering to witness you leaving us this way. I am so sorry that this condition found its way to you, to your beautiful mind. Please don't say you're sorry. It's the condition. It's not Papa, I tell the boys. We understand the way it takes and takes and takes, selfish and unforgiving, we endure. And still on our way, we find bits of light. With intention day after day, we practice looking for the good, We honor the sunrise. We sit longer and sip slower. We reserve a table for two in our own home, and like a miracle, at times, we find moments of clarity. Today, without your hand in mine, I rise and find my way in the dark. Even more, I find my way to the light. Our sons, young men now, walk toward new adventures. Inside them you live. We will all shine again one day, for you, for us, for others. I am here wanting you close, and it occurs to me that I am the survivor of this diagnosis, of your story, of our story. And to make meaning of it all, I will tell our story, believing it will empower my own healing, and with great hope, open the door to another story and another story. Daughters and sons, spouses and partners carry stories, and when told, unite younger families like us, building a brave, safe space to belong, to be seen, to lift one another on our way through. Our collective light will shut out the darkness, and families like ours will shine on. My dear Lorenzo, it started with true love. Thank you for holding space for me to attach a person, a life, a story to a condition. I got lucky with love. I met my Lorenzo the night I moved to Chicago at a blues bar at 2 a.m. Not exactly, yeah. The Kingston Mines, though, a good place, right? We may as well give the Kingston Mines an applause. We were married, we had 2 sons, and when our boys were 9 and 13, brain change showed up in our home. Lorenzo was diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's, and I call it a diagnosis of the family because of its far-reaching impact. My Lorenzo passed just over a year ago. In the beginning, I knew nothing of this condition. I was in denial. Our family would be the first to beat it, but inside I was devastated and lost and sorrowful. And I remember our older son stopping me outside his bedroom one night, and he said, "Mom, you need to stop crying." This was a defining moment for me. I couldn't see myself, and it was the first time I realized that not only were our boys losing dad, they were losing the mom they knew, because I was changing too. It was time to own this new identity, to get organized and rethink how we were going to make our family work. What seemed like overnight, I closed my husband's business, became sole breadwinner, primary care partner, and just like that, a single parent. The condition was framing our life now, and I tried very hard to take back some sense of control with small, intentional actions. The idea of light became this sort of moving metaphor in my mind, and I was determined to find bits of light on our way and to make it a part of our family's DNA. We placed a small bistro near the window. While we weren't going to make it to Paris, we could go every day in our own home. We replaced our family dining table for a pool table because my Lorenzo loved his pool game. Music was our medicine, playing constantly in our home, awakening pieces of Lorenzo's full self. And improv was really our magic, practicing a new way to connect and to communicate and to show love. Every day we looked for bits of light. It was the mindset that helped us through. Our family walked for nearly a decade with this condition, and I learned very quickly that there was really no place for us. A family with our profile, younger, with young children with dementia. Locally, nationally, globally, there was no place to find each other and virtually nothing for our kids. Younger families affected by dementia are unseen, misunderstood, under-resourced. We are undiagnosed and misdiagnosed. And the numbers are sizable. Worldwide, 4 million individuals are living with younger onset dementia. And if we multiply this by a family of 4, there are over 16 million family members in need of connection and resources and light, with a projected 48 million family members by 2050. Living in Chicago, my family had options, and I know now how incredibly privileged we were to have access. Dr. Mastriani and his team with Tessa McEwen at UChicago Medicine managed our care beautifully. And I will always say wherever I go is that dementia justice is when every family has access to a quality neurologist, a formal diagnosis, and an individualized care team. There are countless stories in the younger community about our path to diagnosis. Because we are younger, this process is often multi-year, multi-doctor, and multi-diagnosis. It is critical that medical professionals are trained to consider cognitive changes in young patients too. So our world was changing. We knew no other family like ours, and this resource gap was real. I felt compelled to make meaning of it all, and I decided to leverage my past career of over 30 years in urban education here in Chicago as a social entrepreneur and a founder and president of a network of public charter schools. And I thought maybe I could leverage my career learnings with my lived experience as a carer and build a place that could fill this resource gap. I imagined a place designed uniquely for younger families with dementia, with an emphasis on the sons and daughters of a parent living with or has lived with younger onset of any form. A place where we could find each other, together shift the narrative from isolation and stigma to connection and strength, and drive a new dementia justice. I imagined Lorenzo's house. And in 2021, I took a leap of faith and launched Lorenzo's house out of our son's bedroom with a small loan from the passionate Bill Lowe here in Chicago with his board at CMSS up in Uptown, and a few hours a week from a college student at Loyola, and a vision to connect every young person and their family who is walking with younger onset so that no family walks alone. Today, 3 years operating, over 2,000 family members across 45 states and 9 countries are connected and have accessed our virtual programming. And I'd like to share a clip from our short film, Shifting the Narrative, that gives you a sense of our young people and the impact the programming is having.
After my first connection with Lorenzo's house, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulder, truthfully. I have met so many beautiful people, and they're also navigating this difficult journey with grace, and we just help each other tremendously.
Our tagline at Lorenzo's house is "We bring light," and the idea is that we are shifting the narrative. Our mission at Lorenzo's house is to empower young people and their families affected by younger onset dementia of any form. We are shifting the narrative, and we're doing this by building community where there once was none. And we're curing isolation with personal connection, and we're driving dementia justice, a world where families affected by dementia are seen and understood and embraced. Our design model is virtual and includes 3 pillar programs: our match, our clubs, and our summit. Our match is our proven care partner to care partner model.
My connection with Robin was an instant relief. Someone my age that knew what I was going through without even having to explain my whole story. Our stories were so similar, knowing that I can call or text someone in a moment of celebration, concern, grief, sadness, and happiness, and they'll pick up and just get it without having to give all the extra pieces and information that's needed to truly understand the impact of those situations. It's like nothing I could have ever imagined and that I could ever find. The light in our match is knowing that I'm not alone in this journey.
Our clubs are virtual spaces to share common stories and exchange insights and find community. We host monthly light clubs for our youth. We host a brunch and a lounge for our care partner spouses. And we just started our Shine On session for those whose loved one has passed.
After Light Club, I feel calm, relaxed, and ready for the rest of my day. Light Club helps me to think deeply. I listen and share, and it gives me a place where I can discuss my dad's condition and get tips and ideas from other kids that would make life easier. It is a good place. Everyone shares similar experiences, and we can all relate to each other.
When I was 10, I found a light. The Light Club has helped me learn how to show light to my dad and how to cope with all of my stress and emotions.
One of the best parts of Light Club was learning from young people at different stages of the journey, and being surprised by things that we're worried and scared about may actually surprise us as being a moment that brings us closer to our loved one. But then also a powerful moment within Light Club was realizing we all have very similar questions that sometimes aren't asked. And this idea that we can come together and try and answer them or figure out what resources there are to answer.
Our camp, which has evolved to our summit, our youth summit, is a worldwide virtual event designed and led by our young people at Lorenzo's house who have a parent living with or has lived with younger onset dementia.
Me and my mom were out to lunch one day. We brought up this camp idea, and the camp is to bring kids like me and my brother who have a parent with Alzheimer's together and have them connect with one another.
Hi everyone, my name is Jalen and I am honored to serve as the MC for Lorenzo's Youth Summit this summer. As a daughter to a father living with younger onset dementia, I understand how isolating and complicated things can be and how hard it is to find peers who understand. Our free summit is exclusively for young people who have a parent living with or has lived with younger onset of any form.
It's a way to give these kids support and a community of other kids also going through the same thing. And so that if they're ever having a hard day, they can reach out to someone in the camp who knows exactly what they're going through and have someone to talk to about it.
At Lorenzo's house, sort of our compass is our young people. And we've moved in this direction because as we've opened and as over these past 3 years, it seems like young people are coming through our doors more than anyone else. And our sons and daughters, and this is our language, is that our sons and daughters often have it the hardest, yet their voice is the softest. Our sons and daughters understand this condition more intimately than anyone because they witness it every day. Our daughters and sons need a place to connect so that together they can identify their own tools and needs for themselves today and for those who walk behind them. And our sons and daughters understand more profoundly how dehumanizing this condition can feel and how it keeps families quiet. Our kids are hungry for justice and passionate about ending dementia stigma. Our young people are the quiet experts and advocates, and we need to help equip them with the tools they need to cope and heal and lead us into the future. We need to give them a seat at the table. They should be at conferences like this. And they will inform our practices and bring insight that we never knew we needed. So let's try another video, because there should be another video in here, and I would introduce you to some of our brave young sons and daughters.
My name is Avi. My dad has younger onset dementia.
My name is Shyla, and my father has younger onset dementia.
Hola, mi nombre es Luis Cordero y mi mamá tuvo inicio temprano de demencia.
Hello, my name is Erwin Compost, and my father has early onset dementia, Alzheimer's.
Hi, my name is Kevin Kelly, and my dad has early onset dementia.
Hi, my name is Robin. My mom has younger onset dementia.
My name is Mattia. My dad has younger onset dementia.
My name is Olivia. My dad has younger onset dementia.
My name is Nicolo and my dad has younger onset dementia.
My name is Jalen. My dad has younger onset dementia, and every day I hope to shift the narrative and bring light with my Lorenzo's House family.
But what I do want to share before, Lorenzo's House was born in Chicago, and while we are virtual, our roots are here. And before I close, I do want to talk about our one. I want to highlight and plug our one in-person, our only in-person program that Darby was talking about just a little bit ago, and that is this most beautiful and joyful class called Music, Movement, and Community. And I want to give a shout out to my sister in this space, Rachel, who is here. Rachel and Bob really gave the vision that launched us into this space to do this, connected us to Old Town School of Folk Music, where we have a beautiful, thriving class on our north side. And the magic in this is this guy right here named Lenny. I don't know if Lenny is still with us right now, but Lenny is nothing but magic. He, not only is he a brilliant musician and instructor, but he also really understands the experience and brings so much joy. And it has built this beautiful community. And then there was an opportunity to write a proposal proposal at Northwestern University to connect with a department inside the Northwestern network, and I called Darby, and Darby says yes, of course, and we were able to now build out our Southside campus, which is at Bright Star, and it's launched this January. And it's beautiful. So now we have we have a Northside campus and a Southside campus, and it just became virtual this past Wednesday. And Glenise up here in the front row is our community liaison for this. And so if there's any questions you have, please drive people to this class. It's beautiful. So thank you for listening. You know, I think it's hard to believe that when our family was walking this, there was not one young person I could connect our sons to. I couldn't, and I'm a fighter. I can find some things. I know how to look under rocks and things like that. And today there's hundreds of families that are connected. So Lorenzo's House is a place where we are really finding connection, and when we connect and we share stories, we empower ourselves and we kind of lift each other on our way through. So thank you for listening, and I invite everyone in this room in some way to join us in whatever way you can. Because there's a lot of work to do, and we're grateful to have this space to share our story.
We're going to have a brief conversation with our panelists. I recognize we are running a little over, but I really want to give this opportunity to hear from those who are living and walking this experience. So please put your hands together for Vicki Johnson, Rashad Johnson, Robert Johnson, and Rachel Kaplan. And thank you so much, Dr. Weintraub, Dr. Morhart, and Diana, for just very powerful and informative presentations. So I know, I'm going to start with you, Vicki, and Robert too. I know you recently walked through this diagnostic process. And I wondered if you could share a little bit about what that was like for you. Thank you, Rashad. I think the green light is on and then the red is off.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I would say back in like 2019, when I was experiencing the typical loss of memory and getting lost driving and things like that. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. So I came to Northwestern and I saw my neurologist, Dr. Kahan, and we went through, is it Kahan or Kahan?
Yeah, perfect.
Kahan, okay. So we went through a battery of tests, the normal tests we always have to take. And then he gave me, I think, about 3 or 4 different things to try to see exactly what was going on with me. So I had to do speech therapy. And I was like, what does speech therapy have to do with my memory? And so he's like, just go and do it. So, so I did. Actually, I went to Christ Hospital first. And it was a 6-week process, once a week. And it helped a little bit, but not much. After that, I came back. I told him I'm still having issues. Ended up going to speech. I found a second speech therapist. Went there at Northwestern, where I probably should have went at the first time. But and then that speech therapy did help a little bit. It just kind of gave me techniques to use when my memory was, when I couldn't remember some things. So after that, I went back to Kahan. I said, I'm still having the same issues. And he said, okay. He also had me go and see a counselor. Actually, a psychiatrist and a psychologist. I had to see both because I had a lot of deaths in the family. It was right after COVID, so I had a lot of emotional things going on too, and we weren't quite sure what was causing this, and he wanted to, get a better idea what was going on. So went through all of that, still experiencing the symptoms. So last year, in early part of last year, I asked Dr. Kahan if I can do a spinal tap because I did my research And I found out that you can, find out really what's going on through the spinal tap. So he agreed, did the spinal tap. It took a while to get the results back, but after about 2 or 3 months, I think, we finally got the results back, and he had me come in, and he did tell me that I did have the APOE4, and actually I believe I have both copies. So he said, so you do have it. And then he kind of introduced me to, was it you, Darby, or Lauren? Darby? Yeah, I don't know which one came first.
They come together.
But both of them have been working very closely with me. So started working with them. And at the time I was working. So I was working for Feeding America. My job there was supply chain. And basically what I had to do is contact manufacturers when they were donating food and find out which food bank can pick up the food or the food can be delivered to, and transportation. And I was doing that, but I started having issues with working, and no one ever said anything to me. But I knew something was wrong. And I also had to do an orientation for new employees to the supply chain department. So when I was doing that, it started out pretty good, but after a year, I started forgetting things. Things weren't going, the way they were, well, the way I wanted them to. And so I knew something was really, really, going on. So anyway, that was before the diagnosis. But once I found out about the diagnosis, I let my HR know. They were very understanding and empathetic, and was there for me, basically. After that, my husband, he helped me fill out a lot of the Social Security forms for disability, and he basically took care of all of that, because it was hard for me to read directions and comprehend and retain that information. So he helped me out with a lot of that. And I just thank you so much, honey.
No, I think hearing from you, we can hear how complicated and how long this journey can take.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. So, yeah. And since then, I'm no longer working. I am active. Seems like I'm always at Northwestern downtown all the time. But I have been involved in.
Excuse me. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, just the
I have been involved in a couple of studies, and I forgot to read this paragraph before, so let me read that quickly.
Absolutely.
It's an introduction. Vicki and Robert have been married 26 years. They have 6 children. One is deceased. Vicki relocated from Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Michigan to Chicago, where she met Robert. Robert is retired from the Chicago Transit Authority as a rail supervisor. Since moving to Chicago, Vicki has worked with 2 nonprofit organizations, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I worked there for 10 years as an administrator, and then Feeding America, where I worked 15 years in supply chain. So that being said, let's see. Well, let me just open it up for any questions.
Well, actually, Vicki, I think what I would, I think we are going to get there, but I wanted to say thank you so much for going. You can hear just the level of testing that needs to be done. Again, going to meet other providers, trying to do all of that was referred. And I wonder, Robert, for you as the care partner, how was that? It sounds like you, were so instrumental also in taking every next step together. And I wonder if you could speak briefly about your role in this.
Sure, I can do that. I guess at first, when she was going through the discovery process, and there was some denial. It's like, oh, that's nothing. You do that all the time. You forget.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just me just dismissing, her symptoms. So after, but I was very supportive at what she wanted to do and what, and how she wanted to do it. So when she was going through the process of, going to different speech therapists and and eye doctors and things like that. So, you know, I would take her there, you know, be supportive and try and figure out really what was going on. So it was great that I had the time to do it and be supportive and you know, I ain't going nowhere. So 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 yeah. But it was a process of, you know, just trying to get the answer for what was going on. And at that time, getting the answer, getting the diagnosis, you know, was a relief at some point to know that this is the cause of what was going on with her.
Yeah.
You know, the short-term memory loss and things like that. So I can't say it was very difficult because, you know, she does things. She's a fighter, you know what I mean? And she takes the initiative to do what needs to be done. So, and that's what she does. That's what she does for the family, for all 6 kids, you know, and grandkids. So, so the process, you know, was very long, but, you know, rewarding to get the diagnosis.
Yeah, and then along the way, getting all the resources, listening to recommendations like speech therapy. And it's finding what supports are out there. And we learned about Lorenzo's house just this, you know, moments ago. Thank you, Diana. And I'm wondering, I'm going to ask you, Rachel, you know, again, looking for support, not just for yourself, but for your partner, for your spouse. Can you tell us a little bit about how you responded to that and looking for supports for both of you?
Yeah, I will reiterate that the importance of support is just, it's paramount. Nobody, and I do say that, nobody gets through this alone. Nobody. And the more people you have in your network, the more friendships you have, the more supportive family you have, the more medical resources, the more other resources that you find out, the better situated you will be. So I'm first going to start just briefly about supports that I have found as a spouse of someone who is young onset, and then I'll talk about supports that I have found for my husband. So supports for me include, and I literally did this the moment I found out that my husband was diagnosed. I wrote down a list of all of my friends and all my family members and all of my neighbors and everyone who I thought would help me in this journey. And I'm really happy to report that almost everyone and more have been there for me. That doesn't always happen, but it is really important to be able to rely on others. The other thing I tried to do, and this took some doing, was I tried to get, well, I got professional help. I got a therapist who was indispensable. I got my husband a therapist, and his therapist is in this room, and I just want to mention his name because he's been so invaluable to my husband and to me and our daughter. It's David Paris, and he's sitting back there, so a clap out to David. And of course, this whole world is interconnected, so I found out about David through Darby. That was really helpful to get professional support because your friends don't necessarily know what this process is like. Some of them may have had a parent who have gone through it, and it is entirely different if it's a spouse. And so people who had a parent who went through this could be helpful, but I needed someone who was in my exact role. And then I spent a lot of time finding support groups. My support groups now have support groups. I have like 4 or 5 support groups. Northwestern has a support group. Rush has a support group. Lorenzo's house has a support group. There's an organization in LA founded by a woman named Lauren Miller, who happens to be married to Seth Rogen. And that organization is called Hilarity for Charity. They have support groups and education and programs, and there is a lot out there. It is harder to find a young onset support group, but it is really important that you find that support group, not a regular Alzheimer's support group, because the issues, the concerns, the feelings are very, very different when it's your spouse versus a parent. And The other thing that I was able to do after I reached out to Lorenzo's house and Diana was we started, along with the Old Town School and Lorenzo's house, this music class at Old Town. And every other week, me and 5 other couples and or families get together and sing and dance and play music, and it is bliss. It is great. And that group also has kind of become yet another support group. We do things weekly, monthly. I'm on the phone with 1 or 2 members of the group most weeks, if not more, and that has been hugely helpful. So that's basically how I would approach it as it affected me, the caregiver. For my husband, what I tried to do was follow the advice of Darby and our doctor, Dr. Ian Grant, who may also be here and has been very helpful, and Northwestern in general, which is keep your partner structured, social, and exercised. So I have tried to do that as best I can. I'm going to make yet another plug here for CJE, the Council for Jewish Elderly. The director of the program is sitting right in front of me, Victoria Gruber. And for several years now, my husband has gone to CJE several times a week. By the way, you do not have to be Jewish to go. A lot of its members are not Jewish. And they provide an unbelievably amazing program with scheduled activities every hour on the hour, more than one. And it's very well run. There's lots of people there, lots of diversity. And it has been a godsend for us. It keeps my husband engaged and structured, and it gives me a break. And it's also quite affordable as opposed to paying for caregivers. So that has been wonderful. Other things we have since found were things like there's a Lincoln Park Zoo class for people with dementia, started by a man named Bill Green, and that is also fantastic. And there are tons of online activities from OLLI, which is online classes or in-person classes offered by Northwestern, to One Day University, which is lectures provided by well-known professors around the country, to Masterclass, to 92nd Street Y, and every other venue you can think. I also make sure that we walk our dog regularly, that my husband and I bike together, we play tennis a lot. Keeping physically active is very important, not only for him, but for me. So I think I'll stop at that and leave it for the next question.
No, and thank you. Yes, yes. And I want to go to you, Rashad, if I may. I want, again, with younger onset, we're learning how much this impacts the children of those who are walking with this diagnosis. And I wanted to see if you had, what would you like to share? What would you like people to know about your experience? Anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak. Is it too loud? Mm-hmm. Hello? All right. Yeah, so it hasn't been much of a challenge, I would say. I'm just glad that we got the diagnosis and that my mom has clarity of knowing what it is, because ever since she's had a smile on her face every day. And that's what keeps me confident and secure and gives me the motivation to, continue to keep her happy and give my dad the support to support her. But it's kind of been, she has her days where, sometimes there may be a symptom of repeating something that she's really passionate about. Recently, she had a brother who got diagnosed with cancer. And so obviously that's something that would hit home and something that's passionate, but she couldn't remember sometimes, if she told other family members or she let other family members know. And that's something that she's passionate about. So other than that, it's just everything's very normal, very happy. I'm doing my best to kind of, just keep her spirits high and keep my dad's spirits high. And one other thing I want to mention is we went on a boat cruise, an Alzheimer's boat cruise on the Chicago River. And I can say that that was a life or eye-opening experience for me, just to kind of see what people who are living with Alzheimer's and dementia and how they're living and how they're really still happy and how they're really still enjoying life. It was We were partying, having fun, and singing and dancing. So that was really eye-opening for me. But other than that, no real challenges for me or the family. But she's very supportive of my 2-year-old daughter, and I couldn't ask for a greater parent.
Oh, Rashawn, thank you so much for being here and joining our panel. I know we are at our time today. What I would really love to invite, I know we've gone a little bit over, and usually we'd open it up for questions from the audience, but what I would love to encourage you to do while you get your lunch is to talk to our panelists. Ask them, tell them anything that you noticed that maybe inspired you, that helps you in your walk, that might inspire your work as a researcher, as a healthcare provider. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I want to please, a round of applause for our amazing panel.